Hey everybody, and welcome to our lesson on scatter plots and association. Things we're going to be talking about are the basic look of a scatter plot, what are outliers, and the types of associations we might see, positive, negative, or maybe none. A scatter plot is really just a visual of some kind of charted data in the form of points. And once we create the visual for certain things, we can see more clearly if they have a relationship. So that's why we like them. It's also helpful for determining trends or patterns and helping us predict the future. So let's take a look at an example of what one looks like. Take a look at this one here. This looks like someone has measured over a certain period of time some temperatures for each day and the amount of visitors at a certain beach that were present during each day. And it looks like, it seems to be that there's a relationship between the two things here. It looks like as the temperatures increased, we had more and more visitors. Now, it's not a steady, strong increase. You can see that there are some dots that seem to be out of place, or it's not a perfectly straight line, but that's what a scatter plot is. It'll just sort of look like it may have a relationship but won't be a perfectly sloped straight line. Okay, so what is an outlier? We saw that term in the opening slide. Outliers are sort of what they sound like. They're out from the rest of the group. They might be far away from the rest of your data, or you may have some data in a cluster and they're just kind of over to the side by themselves. Sometimes it's hard to identify those. Sometimes it's really easy. They're very far away. Let's go back and look at our picture and see if we see any. Looks like we do have one little point out here that might not necessarily fit with the rest of the pattern of our data. It seems that as the temperatures increased, there were more and more visitors, but this one here might indicate, we've got a higher temperature, but it seemed to fall and less visitors that time. So that could be considered an outlier, not sure. And sometimes they're on the ends of your data. So just be on the lookout for those, because those won't necessarily always fall in line with the rest of your trend. All right, so what types of associations might we see? Well, we talked about this one, this same chart is seen here. As one thing increased, the temperatures, so did the other, the visitors. And when you see that happen, that is called a positive association. As one thing's increasing, so is the other. The higher the temperature at the beach, the more visitors that this person saw who was charting the data. You might also see a negative association as you're coming across data. One example of this could be if someone was charting the amount of hours that people were exercising at a gym and then their body weight and relating the two. You might logically assume maybe the more hours that are exercised, the less your body weight becomes. So that is a negative association. When one thing's increasing and the other is decreasing, that's negative. Okay, you might also come across some scatter plots that look something like this that don't really have any kind of trend that we can see. We can't tell if there's a positive or negative. So some of them just have no association. We'll just say none for those. And one example could be if you're looking at products and the quality of those products and the price. It doesn't necessarily mean that the more you pay for something, the better it will be. So whichever product and quality from the customers that this is being measured from just didn't seem to have any kind of association. So here's an example of that, of no association. All right, so how do we graph these? We just simply take our table of values on an XY coordinate grid and plot our points and see if we can come up with some kind of relationship. So we're going to do that together. And when you see these, one of the skills that's important is to determine what kind of units should we put on our axis. And I can see in the X column here that I have each one going up by 1 unit. So I'm just going to stick to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on that axis. Let's go ahead and label that. at the bottom. And then for our y's, you can see the highest one's 50 and the lowest one's 25. You can decide, you could maybe go up by 10s or 5s. You wouldn't want to do one at a time here because you'd have to number up to 50. So that's something you'll have to determine as you come across these. What would be the best, increments of measure. So let's measure all the way up to 50 or maybe 55 since that's our highest. 40, 45, 50. We'll go up to 55 so we can see a little bit above our window of values here. All right, so first point, I've got 225, so I'm going to plot the point 225 here. All right, and then 335, you just got to go find all your coordinates and make your points. 4, 40, that's our next one. 539, down a little bit, and then 6 and 50. All right, so it looks like there is some kind of pattern here, some kind of relationship. Looks like it's a positive association. Seems to be the higher that our, let's see what our X is measuring, the population of a town, the higher that goes, seems to be the number of restaurants is increased. So that makes sense. The more members in a town, the more restaurants they would need to accommodate that. So if we were using this to make a prediction, we might say, okay, so for a town of population of 7,000, if we continued on, they may have more than 50 restaurants, which was our highest value that we saw for 6. Or if we have a town that was somewhere down here in this area, 1,000, maybe a tiny little town, they may have fewer than 25. We can look for outliers. I don't see any that are very far off from the rest of our data here, but there is one little data point here that didn't follow the normal trend of the rest. It seemed to decrease for that particular town, but that's going to happen from time to time. All right, so when you do find a pattern in your data, sometimes it's very, very strong and it forms a nice tight line there, like this one on the left, and sometimes it seems to be a general trend, but it's not a very strong association. So be on the lookout for that. The more scattered your points are, the weaker the association. So this concludes our lesson on scatter plots and association.